Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So welcome to the GITA SAAR seminar, a 3-day seminar where we are trying to go through the Bhagavad Gita. So if all of you, all those who are online, if you can hear me clearly, and all those who are physically here, if you can hear me clearly, can you please give a confirmation by raising your hand? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll do a little bit of Kirtan for 5 minutes. It helps us to make the atmosphere very pure and auspicious. And whatever invocations which we are going to sing, we'll show it on the screen and everybody can see that and try to sing with us. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prajapate Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prajapate Nirvishesha Pashatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Jai Shri Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. The mic needs to be adjusted. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much for all those who have assembled here. I will request everybody to come a little towards the front. There's a lot of space at the back, a lot of space in the front. In the middle, people are sitting. So thank you. Let's have a packed up hall, starting from the front. And thank you everybody for those who are joining online. My name is Acyuta Arjunasakha. I am a teacher here at ISKCON Bhakti Center, Kannamangala. And I'm very, very happy that so many people have shown interest to understand the message of Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Bhagavad Gita, which is called as the Gita SAAR. Actually, Bhagavad Gita is a very detailed subject matter. Every single verse of Bhagavad Gita can be discussed for days together. But here we are trying to just address the topic in such a way that we want to understand all the 700 verses, not even in 700 minutes. We are just trying to squeeze in as much as possible and try to take out the essence of the essence of the essence of the essence, so that we have some understanding what is the overview of the Bhagavad Gita, what is the interconnection between various chapters, and how does it help me in my life and things like that. The whole idea of this seminar is that the objective of this seminar is that we want to help everybody understand the importance of Bhagavad Gita in their day-to-day life. We want to enrich the experience of studying Bhagavad Gita for everybody. Even if one person becomes inspired to go back and study the Bhagavad Gita nicely, then the seminar will be successful. And even if one person who has not yet studied the Bhagavad Gita becomes inspired to study it, then also it will be a success. So how many of you, before I start, how many of you have actually read the Bhagavad Gita and you have an idea what the Bhagavad Gita is? Okay. And how many of you have never read the Bhagavad Gita ever? Okay. You've never read the Bhagavad Gita? Okay. And what about those who are online? How many of you have not read the Bhagavad Gita? Can you please raise your hands so that I have an idea what kind of audience we have here? Okay. Okay, it's kind of a mixed audience then. So let's start our discussion. We'll go chapter wise and we'll try to see what is the flow of the entire chapter and what are the important verses in that chapter. And we'll try to do it in a conversational style. It will not be a lecture or a classroom approach. We'll try to make it as interactive as possible, and doubts we will take only towards the end, because we have very less time to present the subject matter only. So we have 3 days in this seminar. So we have decided that we'll cover chapter 1 to 6 today, chapter 7 to 12 tomorrow, and chapter 13 to 18 day after tomorrow, that is on Sunday. So it is absolutely essential and mandatory that all the devotees who are attending should be present on all the 3 days, if at all you want the Gita SAAR. Please don't think that the first 6 chapters are important, or the middle 6 chapters are important, or the last 6 chapters are important. Everything is important. If you miss, then you cannot say that you have understood the essence of Gita. Okay? So I'm again going to share my screen for those who are online. So even before I begin, I'm going to remember all my teachers who have taught me everything which I'm going to speak today, share with all of you. I'll take their blessings. This session is dedicated to my spiritual grandfather, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And in order to invoke their blessings and offer this session for their pleasure, I would chant some mantras. Those who know, they can repeat with me. Those who don't, they can try to hear it attentively. It helps in purifying the consciousness and makes one more attentive to digest, understand, and assimilate the message of Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guruho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kant Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Vancha Galpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Harihi Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. So we are in the day 1 of this Gita SAAR and we are trying to cover chapter 1 to 6. Even before I begin, some basics and the fundamentals of Gita, because some of you are joining and some of you have not read the Bhagavad Gita, and all those who know, they will also relish this. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the commentators on the Bhagavad Gita, compares the Bhagavad Gita to be like a jewel box, as you can see in the screen. The upper lid of this jewel box is compared to be the Jnana Yoga section. The lower lid is compared to be the Karma Yoga section. And in between is the Bhakti Yoga. The point which we are trying to say here is, the Bhagavad Gita is so aligned and so set up that the most important, okay, in this jewel box, what is the most important thing? The jewel or the box? Jewel, of course. So, in the first initial 6 chapters, Krishna talks broadly about the Karma Yoga section, spread across mostly in the first 6 chapters. And in the last 6 chapters, it is mostly focused upon transcendental knowledge which purifies the heart and frees one of the doership mentality and false ego and other things. So, and in between, Krishna has put the most important part of the Bhagavad Gita, that is the Bhakti Yoga. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, just like when a king comes somewhere or when a queen comes somewhere, in front of the king or the queen, there are a lot of people who are walking, attendants. And behind the king or the queen, there are a lot of people walking, the attendants. And in the middle, the king is there. So therefore, In the beginning 6 chapters, we talk about Karma Yoga. In the middle 6 chapters, that is chapter 7 to 12, we talk about the Bhakti Yoga. And in the last 6 chapters, we basically talk about the Jnana Yoga, or the Jnana section. One of the reasons why Krishna put the most essential subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita, that is the Bhakti Yoga, in the middle, because he did not want the impersonalist and the voidist commentators to simply comment something upon the Bhakti Yoga and go to hell. Many people, they never cross the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita because they are so much obsessed with these aspects of Dhyana Yoga and Karma Yoga and other things. They think that, okay, their journey is over. Krishna wasted time speaking the remaining 12 chapters. Hamara kaam to first 6 chapters mein ho gaya. So we don't need to read anything after that. So in order to save from the onslaught of the impersonalist commentators, Krishna purposely put the most important section of the Bhagavad Gita in middle. So that is what we have to understand. And Bhagavad Gita is like a jeweled treasury box which contains the jewel of Bhakti Yoga. And what is Bhakti? When a devotee of Krishna renders unalloyed devotional service without any expectations of returns, with a desire to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, that is called Bhakti. And that is the most important message and the most important essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Now, time and again, I'll have to keep sharing the screen for online people. So there are 5 major topics in the Gita. As you can see, Ishvara, Prakriti, Jiva, Kala, and Karma. Ishvara tells who is God. It's very important to know, right, who is God? Yeah. So the Bhagavad Gita says who is God. And then the Bhagavad Gita also tells about how to work or how to act. That is called karma. It also tells you who we are, who you are, the Jivatma. Who am I? And then what is the world around us? That is called Prakriti, and the Kala, that is time factor. So those who are students of the regular Gita course, which is separate from this Gita, they have recently gone through the time aspect, and they have already covered Karma, Ishvara, Jiva, and Prakriti in the previous sessions. So these are the 5. The whole Bhagavad Gita talks about these 5 main subject matters: Ishvara, Prakriti, Jiva, Kala, and Karma. Out of this, Ishvara, Prakriti, Jiva, and Kal, they are eternal. Karma is temporary because karma keeps changing every moment, life after life. But this Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, and Kal, they are eternal. They can never change. Okay. So now, having understood this much, we enter into the chapter 1. It's very famous. I think all of you know this verse. You can all repeat with me if you want. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So this verse is very important. This is the beginning verse, first verse of Bhagavad Gita. Many of you must have been knowing it, hearing it by heart. In this verse, basically the mentality of Dhritarashtra is being reflected. Dhritarashtra is having a separatist mentality. He is telling Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva. The sons of Pandu, their father Pandu is dead. So ideally the elder brother should have given full shelter and considered Pandavas also his sons. But he doesn't do so. He says, Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva. So the separatist mentality is very clear in the first verse of Bhagavad Gita. He considers his sons as his own, and he wants them to be benefited. And the original righteous heirs to the throne, Pandavas, he considers them not as his own. Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva. And Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. He is asking Sanjaya that when my sons and the sons of Pandu, when they have assembled in the Kurukshetra, Yuyutsavaha, with a desire to fight, what did they do? This is a very, very double meaning question. When you assemble with a desire to fight, what will you do? You will only fight. But then Dhritarashtra has some secret hidden desires that may be in the battle of Kurukshetra or in the atmosphere of Kurukshetra, Kurukshetra being a holy land, the Pandavas will get spiritually influenced and maybe they will have desires not to fight. Maybe they will give away land to my, or the kingdom to my sons even without fighting, because I know my sons cannot win. I know Krishna is on their side. So these so many doubts and questions he's having, and he just wants some reassurance from Sanjaya. Later on, in the first chapter, between verses 2 to 11, Duryodhana's fear and diplomacy in describing the armies is talked about. Duryodhana is very surprised to see, okay, so many Akshwani Senas these Pandavas have assembled. And he becomes a little bit surprised, and he's not very pleasantly surprised. And he goes to his his teacher, Dronacharya, and starts talking. He starts talking very diplomatically that, see, all these people, they have come here to lay down their lives for me. Actually, that will turn out to be true. And then he's expressing his fear in a very subtle way, saying that they have only Bhima as the powerful warrior. We have Bhishma, who is unparalleled in experience. So in this way, in these 10 verses, the fear of Duryodhana is very much evident and very much described. Moving on. Later on, they all blow their conch shells. In the verses 12 to 19, the blowing of conch shells is told. Now, why is this very important? It's not just a coincidence that the conch shells of the 5 brothers are named. And all the others who are blowing conch shells, their conch shells are not named. And it's not just a coincidence that only those people whose conch shells are named in the Bhagavad Gita, only they remain alive after the Mahabharata, and rest everybody dies. So blowing of conch shells is actually a sign of victory. Some of the signs of victory which was there on the side of Pandavas were, number 1, Krishna was there. Number 2, their conch shells were called as Divya Shankha, transcendental conch shells. Same was not said about the conch shells of the Kauravas. They were just said conch shells. They blew their conch shells. But the conch shells of Krishna, Arjuna, and others, they were divine conch shells that signified some victory is impending. And on the chariot of Arjuna, and Arjuna's chariot is called as Kapidhwaja. So Hanuman is there on the chariot. So wherever there is Krishna, the devotees of Krishna are there. So just like when we try to present some seminar, we pray to the previous acharyas that please bless us so that we can speak something which is in line with you. Similarly, the reason why Arjuna put Hanuman flag on the chariot was he was praying to Hanuman that when Lord Ram was there, you had basically assisted him in the war against Ravana. Now I'm also trying to fight a war for the Lord against Ravana-like people. You please assist me. So this is called as Parampara system. And of course, the chariot of Arjuna was not an ordinary chariot. It was gifted by the fire demigod, and the horses were also very special. So these were some sign of victory. However, Arjuna says to Krishna that you please take the chariot in between the 2 armies. And Krishna is understanding why is Arjuna saying that. And because he's Bhakt Vatsal, he's completely surrendered to the will of his pure devotees. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he becomes an order carrier for his devotee and takes the chariot in between. And then after seeing his family members, after seeing the other people, Arjuna's heart becomes overwhelmed with compassion for the family members, with the bodily consciousness. This is mine, this is yours, how can I kill these people, etc., etc. And so therefore, Arjuna decides not to fight. And he gives some reasons. What are the reasons which he gives? He says that I'm developing some compassion for my friends and relatives. This is the bodily consciousness of life. For example, if a policeman if a police inspector is sitting in the police station and somebody brings his brother saying that, okay, your brother has been caught for theft, then what should the policeman do? He should say, oh, he's my brother, I will release him. No. Being a statesman, he should punish. So similarly, Arjuna was so much affected by the bodily consciousness that he was not willing to fight. Although to fight was his right, but he was thinking whether it is right to fight. That was the situation of Arjuna. And then typical materialist mentality. I want to have a car, I want to have a house, I want to have everything. Why? So that I can show it off to my relatives. If somebody lives on a lonely island, nobody will have any opulence. But because they live in a place where they don't like some people, and in order to impress the people whom they don't like, they want to have some wealth. So therefore, Arjuna is saying that if everybody is dead, then who will I enjoy this opulence and this wealth with? So forcing no enjoyment in victory. Even if I enjoy, there's nobody to enjoy with. Even if I become victorious, there's nobody to enjoy. And next he's saying there are some sinful reactions which I will incur. So many people who will die in this battle, and the wives will become widows, the mothers will be helpless, and that will lead to so many further problems. Arjuna lists down those problems and says ultimately Varna Shankar will happen. The society, where the women will become unprotected, and then they will have to get engaged in adultery, etc., etc. So he was telling all these things. And of course, and the last reason which he gives, not the last, but the second last, he says that if all the elder people die, then the family tradition will be destroyed. And if the family tradition is destroyed, then even all the good activities and the social welfare projects which are happening, everything will stop. And as a result of which, in the Pitriloka, the ancestors will also fall down from their exalted position. So all these reasons Arjuna is given. Basically, he is in a very indecisive mode, Arjuna. And saying all this, he says, my dear Govinda, I shall not fight. And the Gandiva slips from his hand. So this is the quick overview of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This brings us to the second chapter. It's called as Contents of Gita Summarized. When Krishna is hearing all these things from Arjuna, he's smiling, but at the same time he's telling, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? You know, it's not suited to you. You are the world conqueror, son of Pandu, belonging to the Bharata dynasty. You're Pritha, you're the son of Kunti. Why are you talking like this? This will only lead to infamy, and this will not lead to higher destinations. This is not the Kshatriya code of conduct. How has this petty impurity come upon you? So Krishna is asking him this. But then Arjuna does something which is very, very special here. He accepts that, yes, I need help. This is the major problem which we all face in our life. For the fear of being proven wrong, for the fear of being ridiculed, the idea that I always have to be right and I always have to be perfect stops us from taking help from the right people at the right time. It takes a hero to approach someone to ask for help. And Arjuna is a hero. And at the right time, he asked for help to the right person. So there's this very famous verse, which is like the thematic verse of the second chapter. Karpanya dosho pahata swabhavaha prichhami tvam dharma sammudha chetah yat shreyasyan nishchitam bruhitan me shishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. Arjuna is telling that now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. Karpanya dosha pahata swabhava. And yat shreyasyan nishchitam bruhitam. I am telling you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Shishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. Now I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So until Arjuna was speaking, until Arjuna said that, okay, I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. Although Krishna, who is the supreme personality of Godhead, who is actually the spiritual master of all spiritual masters, he was not instructing anything to Arjuna. First, when Arjuna surrendered, then he started preaching. This is something which we can learn from Krishna. We become the spiritual master of everybody. We give free advice to everybody. Even when we meet someone whom we don't care for, we just throw our advice at that person as if like, please take my advice. It's for free. Anyways, I don't need it. I don't care for you. I'll never come back and check with you whether you took my advice or not, whether it helped you or not. But just because I have that urge to speak, I want to advise you. That is not the ideal behavior. Austerity of speech has to be practiced. So in this way, Krishna teaches us that, and Arjuna teaches that in the right time, we have to ask for right help. Moving on. Later on, the Jnana and the Sankhya aspects come over. Analysis of matter and spirit. What is matter? What is spirit? This analysis is called Sankhya. And the result of Sankhya is that one gets knowledge. That is called Jnana. So Krishna, although he hears the weekly or the submission of the Arjuna in a very smiling way, first he tries to dispel the bodily consciousness of Arjuna, the material consciousness which he has developed. He first tries to explain Arjuna that, see, material body is perishable, but the spirit soul is imperishable. Spirit soul is always alive and the body is never alive. This is the discussion which happens in the next few verses. Dehino yasmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namohyati. So as you can see in the picture also, which is next, it says, as the embodied soul continuously passes from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly the soul passes from one body to another at the time of death. And dhiras tatra namohyati. Dhira, or a sober person, is not bewildered by such a change. A person who is too much disturbed by these changes, oh, my father passed away, my mother passed away, my uncle passed away, this person passed away. If somebody is too much affected by it, they cannot be dhira. They can never be sober. The Bhagavad Gita says that no, who has passed away? The body is right now here. The chemical composition of the body is almost the same. The kidney is there, the blood is there, the urine is there, the pus is there, the heart is there, the brain is there, the eyes are there, everything is there. And who has passed away? The soul has passed away. So it's not the soul which is dying, just the body. As I said, the soul is always alive, the body is never alive. So one who understands this, he is a dhira. But then Arjuna is saying that, see, I can understand all these points. But I still can't stop lamenting because these people, they are worshipable for me. And if they will die, although I understand that they are not going to die, but still when they will die, I will feel very bad. Because I'm very attached. So then Krishna says, just tolerate. Matra sparshasthu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkhadaha agama paino nityas tam stitikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata. One must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Matra sparshas tu kaunte. The same water in the month of summer, when we put on our head, we feel so good. But the same water in the month of winter, when we put on our head, we feel so bad. So an intelligent man tolerates it. We cannot adjust the material nature to such a degree that we will always be comfortable. If we make everything according to our desires, plans, so that we become comfortable, ultimately a mosquito will come and make us uncomfortable. And then we go for the mosquito and then something else, a virus will come and make us uncomfortable. So we cannot, this material world is dukkhalaya. So therefore one needs to learn how to tolerate things. Bhagavad Gita is the only book which doesn't tell you that, which tells you that not all the problems of life are meant to be solved. We have to learn to tolerate. Tam stitikshasva bharata. That's the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita. Then, in the same chapter, which is the summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita, by the way, Krishna goes on to talk about the sakam karma. Performing prescribed duties gives enjoyment. Basically, Krishna is telling to Arjuna that, see, if you fight, my dear Arjuna, if you win, then you'll get the entire planet for you to rule. However, if you lose trying to fight very dutifully, you'll go to the higher planetary systems. So what is the loss? If you win, you'll get the kingdom of earth. And if you lose with a dutiful method of fighting, you'll still ascend to the higher planetary system. So there's no loss. So this is called as sakama karma yoga. That means Krishna is telling, this is the goal, this is the enjoyment, this is the carrot, you work for the enjoyment. And in both ways, you'll get the profit. However, this is not the ultimate teaching of Bhagavad Gita, because Krishna changes the carrot after this. Immediately after this, Krishna goes on to Krishna talks about Nishkama Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. So earlier Krishna was telling you work with a desire to enjoy, but later on he says this is not the highest. The higher thing is that you work, but you give up the desire to enjoy the results of your activities. Without attachment to the results, you work just for the sake of working. This is called as detached work without reactions. When somebody is so much attached to the work, then they take so much accountability of it in a way so that the laws of karma, they force that person to suffer the reactions, good or bad, which they are performing. However, if somebody is detached from the results of the work itself, then whatever reactions that come out of it, a person doesn't suffer because of it. These are subtle laws of material nature, which Krishna is explaining. So basically, Krishna later on recommends that you work without being attached to the results. So therefore, he tells this very nice verse. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kuranandana bahushakha hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayina. So he's telling that in order to walk on this path of Nishkam Karma Yoga, you have to be resolute in your purpose. Krishna says, those who are resolute in their purpose, their aim is one. And those whose intelligence is multi-branched, they will always be irresolute to whatever they're doing. They'll not be able to walk on this path of Nishkam Karma Yoga. They'll end up developing some petty temporary attachments with respect to their body or the extensions of their body. That's what Krishna is explaining in this verse. Later on, towards the end of this chapter, Krishna talks about Sthita Pragya. I think many of you know about Sthita Pragya. The qualities of a liberated soul or a Jivan Mukta. First, he tells how a Sthita Pragya can be compared to a tortoise. Whenever you see a turtle or a tortoise, immediately, as soon as some danger comes, it pulls its hands and legs and head also within the shell, and it keeps itself safe. So Sthita Pragya is like that. He is in control of his senses and he uses his senses according to his plan. A person who is not a Sthita Pragya will not be able to do that. And how to do this? How to become a Sthita Pragya? Sense control is possible only when these senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. Otherwise, it's not possible. Only by practicing devotional service to the Supreme Lord, the senses can be controlled. Otherwise, we have examples of people like Vishwamitra who controlled their senses so nicely, but one single deviation and everything was lost. We have examples of Saubhari Mani for 10,000 years meditating underwater. He saw two fishes mating and he lost himself after that. So therefore, time and again, we have seen in the scriptures that unless someone becomes a devotee of Krishna, devotee of the Lord, and uses their senses in the service of the Lord, it is not possible to become a Sthita Pragya. And how does this Sthita Pragya, what is the dangers which this Sthita Pragya faces? Meditation on sense objects. Dhyayato vishayah pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamat kamat krodho vijayate. Krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshat buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. So when we meditate on the sense objects, we develop attachment to them. This attachment slowly becomes lust. So an intense attachment to anything, not just the opposite gender, an intense attachment to anything can be called as lust. So by meditation on sense objects, we develop attachment. Dhyayato vishapam sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama. That attachment becomes lust. Kamat krodha vijayate. The lust gives rise to anger. Why? Can somebody tell me why lust gives rise to anger?
You don't get it.
But suppose you get it. Then why you become angry? Yes, because lust can never be satisfied only. No matter how much you try to satisfy, ultimately one will be frustrated. And when one is frustrated, that gives rise to anger. So whether you get it or whether you don't get it, in both situations, you'll be angry. It's like an itch. Go on scratching, skin will come out, blood will come out, bone will be coming out, and then I don't know what will come out. Hand will only come out. So a wise man is one who learns how to tolerate the itch. So kamat krodha vijayate, the lust gives rise to anger. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. When anger comes, then one becomes completely bewildered. Sammohat smriti vibhrama. After that, one loses their memory. They forget who they are and what is the purpose of their life. They think that the purpose of life is simply to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. But they do not realize that there is a higher purpose to life. Smriti bhramshad buddhinasho. When memory is destroyed, one's intelligence is destroyed. Buddhinashat pranashyati. And when intelligence is destroyed, one becomes ready to become a thief, a rapist, a terrorist, murderer, whatever. So these are the 8 steps to fall down. And the best way to avoid this fall down, if somebody wants to become a sthita pragya, stop this chain of reaction or chain of thought at the level of dhyayata only. Don't meditate on the sense objects. So the question comes, how to become like that? How is it possible to not meditate on the sense objects when the moment everything around me is a sense object? So the Bhagavad Gita tells that we have to be like the ocean. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudramapah pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. So basically, in the ocean, many rivers are entering, but the ocean doesn't get agitated. It just remains apuryamanam achala pratishtham. It remains in its position. It never gets overflooded or it never gets agitated, never starts dancing that, oh, this river is coming in me, that river is coming in me. So the Bhagavad Gita says that even when I sit in the process of becoming a sthita pragya, or even when I have become a sthita pragya, there will be so many desires which will be flowing constantly from the courtyard of my heart. I have to learn to not be agitated by it and learn to ignore it. A person who runs to satisfy each and every desire which is passing through the courtyard of his heart, he is a kama kami. And the Bhagavad Gita says, na shantim apnoti kama kami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace. And not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So even as I sit here, thousands of desires are passing through the courtyard of my heart. But if I run to satisfy all of them, I'll never be peaceful. But if I become like an ocean, let the desires go and come. I don't mind. I'm fixed up. We have a sayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana. When I'm fixed up, then I'll not be agitated. And when I'm not agitated, I'll not fall down. Then I'll become a sthita pragya. So these are the steps to become a liberated soul or a jivan mukta. So with this, we come to the end of the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm just covering the Bhagavad Gita very thematically and presenting to you the essence of everything. So now we come to the chapter number 3, which is called as the Karma Yoga. So in the chapter number 2, Krishna talked about work with detachment to the results of the work. And in the beginning of the chapter, he also talked about working. So this has confused Arjuna. Arjuna begins the third chapter begins with a question. Arjuna asks the question that should I work or should I give up the work? That is his doubt. But actually, he did not understand the real essence of what Krishna tried to say. Krishna said, you have to renounce the results of the work and not the work itself. But Arjuna has not been able to properly understand, so he's seeking some clarification. So this is the time when Krishna again explains the subject matter of Nishkam Karma Yoga in more detail. And then he recommends that Nishkam Karma Yoga is better for Arjuna than Jnana Yoga. See, what is the result of Nishkam Karma Yoga? Nishkam Karma Yoga means you're not attached to the results. You're not attached to the work also, and you're not attached to the act of doing the work also. You're just doing it as a matter of obligation, as a matter of duty. There are some people who are attached to the results. There are some people who are not attached to the results, but attached to the work. For example, a painter, he's painting something, and then he doesn't care how much his painting is being sold for. So we can say he's detached from the results. But if you pull the paintbrush from his hand, the painter will die. Oh, I can't live anymore. So he's not a Nishkam Karma Yogi. He has some attachments. A true Nishkam Karma Yogi is that person who is not attached to the act of doing work also and the results also, and he's doing it simply as an offering to the God. That is true Nishkam Karma. So when you work as a Nishkam Karma Yogi, purification of heart happens, doership mentality goes away. You understand that Krishna or God is the actual doer. And your heart becomes full of transcendental knowledge. So success in Nishkam Karma Yoga leads to Jnana Yoga. But Krishna has assessed Arjuna's position that his heart is not still purified. He still has desires. He wants to enjoy with his family members. He's fearing some sinful reactions. He's thinking, what is the point of fighting this battle? How can I kill my brother, fathers, uncles, friends, nephews, etc.? So therefore, when heart purification is not complete, then Jnana Yoga will not work. Those who are purified in their consciousness can give up their prescribed duties and remain stable in renunciation. But those whose purification of heart is not fully complete, those who are still meditating on the various sense objects, if they try to artificially give up their prescribed duties, trying to take up the process of Jnana Yoga, they'll simply become a disturbance for the society. So therefore, Krishna told to Arjuna that although Jnana Yoga is better than Nishkam Karma Yoga, but for you, in Nishkam Karma Yoga is better than Jnana Yoga. So, therefore, Krishna says this very famous verse, Yajñarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. He's telling, work has to be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Please listen very carefully. These are the principles of Karma Yoga. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, not your satisfaction. For his satisfaction, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So, Krishna is recommending Arjuna to be on this path of Nishkam Karma Yoga and not yet take to the process of Jnana Yoga. Later on in this chapter, Krishna moves on from the Karma Kanda section to the Karma Yoga section. There are various processes to attain this happiness or material prosperity in general. And Lord Krishna has designed this way, this world in such a way that he encourages various sacrifices or acts of yagyas, basically, sacrifices and yagyas. The word sacrifice in itself means something which is being done for the pleasure of the Lord. So the world has been designed in such a way, the material world has been designed in such a way that it is encouraging sacrifices. So he has made a system where there are some demigods who are in charge of the universal affairs. And for those who are envious of the Lord, who don't want to surrender to Krishna, but want to worship some demigod, Indra, Chandra, Surya, etc., they have to worship them, and the demigods being pleased by them will give them rains and other things. So Krishna is telling that you can attain happiness by performing various yagyas. There has to be a cooperation between men and demigods. And those who accept anything from this earth, water, fire, air, ether, or the combination of these, without offering to the Lord, is a thief. So this concept comes in. That means everybody has to do some kind of sacrifice. Later on, Krishna talks about how even when somebody's heart is purified, still, for the purpose of loka vichar or for the purpose of setting a good example, they should still continue to do their prescribed duties. So therefore, he says this very famous verse: Yad yadacharati shreshthas tat tad devetaro janaha sayat pramanam gurute lokastad anuvartate. Whatever activity a great man performs, a common man or the common public follow. This is a very, very important point in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna could have argued that, see, I have heard the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita now. I'm in the third chapter. My heart is purified. So let me not fight and go to the forest. But still, Krishna is telling that, whatever you will do, the public will follow. So, yadyad acharati shreshthas. Just like a teacher who knows ABCD, but still he writes ABCD in front of the children just to teach them. So although, my Arjuna, if you claim that your heart is fully purified, still you should act and fight this battle. Just to set a good example. And then in the verse number 30, Krishna reveals for the first time in the Bhagavad Gita, he reveals the real intention why he wants Arjuna to fight. Bhakti is for the first time being revealed in this verse. I call it as the glimpse of Bhakti. Krishna says, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya dhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvaraha. Therefore, Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. So, detachment from work is Nishkam Karma Yoga. I repeat, detachment from work is Nishkam Karma Yoga. But coupling the detachment of work with attachment to Krishna is Bhakti Yoga, and it makes the work complete. Do you follow? So therefore, hence proved that Bhakti Yoga contains Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. Everything is there in Bhakti Yoga. Otherwise, why would Krishna conclude with this statement? Mai sarvani karmani. Do everything as an offering to me. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada also directly in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita says that Karma Yoga means Bhakti Yoga. Because he has this conclusive understanding that although a person has perfected Nishkam Karma Yoga, until unless he becomes attached to Krishna, his work cannot be fully complete. And only when he does so, his work is complete, and that is Bhakti Yoga. Okay? Moving on, we will continue the third chapter. In the process, see what we are doing here. We are trying to walk very stably on the path of Karma Yoga. We are trying to attach our heart to Krishna. We are trying to get some knowledge. We are trying to purify our heart. In the process, there is one very strong enemy. What is that enemy? That is called as lust. So therefore, this enemy has to be conquered. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajuguna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidya Enam Iha Vairinam. So, when this love which we have for the Lord becomes polluted with desires for personal sense gratification, and when our little bit freedom is misutilized for sense gratification, then this love becomes perverted as a lust. Okay? So Krishna is telling that this lust has to be conquered. If you want to progress in the path of attaining the goal of life, you have to conquer this lust. Then he talks about the sitting places of lust. He says mind, intelligence, senses, mind, and intelligence. These are the three places where the lust is sitting. Now, in comparison to senses, mind, and intelligence, what is the easiest to control? Senses. So, lust control begins with sense control. That's what Krishna is telling. That if one cannot control their senses, then it is very difficult to control the mind. So, we have to basically steady the mind with deliberate spiritual intelligence. That is needed. But the first step is controlling the senses. So with this, we come to the end of the Karma Yoga section. Moving to the fourth chapter, it's called as Transcendental Knowledge. The first 4 verses talk about the lineage of the transcendental knowledge or the parampara system. Krishna says how he gave this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita first to the sun demigod, Vivaswan. Vivaswan gave it to Manu. Manu gave it to Ikshvaku. And in this way, the same knowledge continued with transparency all throughout these ages. When the transparency was lost, then Krishna again gave this knowledge to Arjuna. And what was the qualification of Arjuna to receive this knowledge? Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hyetaduttamam sa evayam maya tedya yoga proktah puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hyetaduttamam. Krishna says, only that person who is my devotee and who has a non-envious servitude mentality towards me can understand this Gita. So anybody who wants to understand this Gita without becoming a devotee of Krishna, without rendering service to Krishna, forget it. Rahasyam hyetaduttamam. It will remain a rahasya for you forever. And because Arjuna is a devotee and non-envious from Krishna, when this transparency of the parampara system was destroyed due to passage of time, Krishna again gave this knowledge to Arjuna. Later on in the 4th chapter, he explains the divine nature of his appearance. I think everybody knows this verse. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharatah abhyudhanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanadhaya sambhavami yuge yuge. In this verse, Krishna gives 3 different reasons of his appearance. These are the 3 external reasons for Krishna's appearance. What are these reasons? Paritranaya sadhunam. Whenever and wherever there is decline of religion, whenever I hear this word, whenever and wherever, I get goosebumps. How omnipresent and omnipotent is Krishna? Whenever and wherever. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. He didn't say that I'll take birth in Bharat only. Don't think Bharat here means Bharat Khanda. No. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in the practice of religion, O descendant of Bharata, this is that Bharat. And a predominant right of religion, at that time I descend myself. Why? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma samsthapanadhaya sambhavami yuge yuge. To save the pious people, the saintly people, and to annihilate the miscreants, and to reset the dharmic standards again back into the system, I descend whenever and wherever there is a decline in religion. Okay. And then he says another very important point, which helps us to understand the divine nature of Krishna's appearance. He says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvatah Tyaktva deham punar janma ma naiti mameti so Arjuna. He says, anybody who understands the divine nature of my appearance and activities, upon quitting their body, will never take birth again. So simply if we understand tatvatah, not sentimentally, but factually, how Krishna appears and what are the activities which he does, simply if we understand this much, this knowledge in itself is sufficient to take us back to Godhead. Janma karma chamedhi. So Krishna has proved that, see, I'm not like you. I'm divine. Your janma is forced because of your karma. And your karma is forced because of your previous samskaras. There's nothing divine in it. But my janma and my karma are divya, transcendental. That means they are not affected by mode of passion, mode of goodness, and mode of ignorance. So therefore, anybody who understands it factually, scientifically, tatvatah, will never take birth again. So this is the description of the divine nature of Krishna's appearance. Then, in this chapter itself, Krishna talks about the Varnas. He says, he is the creator of all the paths and the culmination of all the paths. He says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sthathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartamanu vartante manushyaha path sarvashah. So different people have different degrees of realization. And according to their degree of attachment and devotion to Krishna, they realize not different things, but different aspects of Krishna. That's why Krishna says that I am the creator of all the paths and all the paths lead to me. I'm the culminate. I'm the culmination of all the paths. So as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pitha. And Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam gunakarma vibhagashah tasya kartaram apimam vidya akartaram avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and work associated with them, the four divisions of the human society are created by me. Please understand, this Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra is not by birth. Janma, it's Guna Karma Vibhagasha, not Janma Janma Vibhagasha. Nobody can be a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra by birth. Just because my father is a High Court judge doesn't mean that by birth I am a High Court judge. Some people are laughing when I say this, but actually people do. Just because my father is a Kshatriya, I am also a Kshatriya. And because I am a Kshatriya, so 3 times a day I have to eat meat, you know. Kshatriya. Do I have the qualities of Kshatriya mentioned in the 18th chapter, shloka number 43? No, I don't have any of those qualities, but I am a Kshatriya. This is the reason why the Vedic culture declined in India. So, and Krishna is telling that this division is natural, scientific. Wherever you go in the society, always you'll find some Brahmana class of people who are visionaries. Always you'll find some people who are like leaders, politicians, administrative people who want to have power in Ishwar Bhav, controllership mentality. Always you'll find those kind of people who work only for incentives, the businessmen. And always you'll find those class of people who take a bag, hang a badge, get into a bus, sit in front of a laptop and do something. That is called the Shudras. Bangalore is full of Shudras. Anybody who works for a salary is a Shudra. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, they cannot accept salary from anybody. Those whose senses are not controlled and those who are good for nothing except helping others in their work, they are meant to be Shudras. And in Kali Yuga, everybody is a Shudra. Kalau Shudra Sambhavaha. But still see the audacity, people say, I am a Brahmin, I am a Kshatriya, and I eat meat because I am a Kshatriya. This is going on. I am not degrading Bangalore. All the people from different parts of India, all the cities are full of Shudras these days. So Varna is decided by Guna and Karma and not by Janma. And these Varnas are scientific. Okay, if anybody is trying to make a flat system, they are simply wasting their time. You cannot destroy something which is created by Krishna. These Varnas are eternal. Every time when creation will happen, automatically there will be some souls who will have more mode of goodness and little bit passion. They'll become Brahmanas. There will be some category of people who have little bit of goodness but more of passion. They'll become Kshatriyas. There will be some people who have almost an equal amount of passion and ignorance. They'll become Vaishyas. And there will be some people who have most amount of ignorance and little bit of passion. They'll become Shudras. You can't stop this from happening. Okay? Don't try to make a classless society. This society is based on Guna and Karma and not on Janma. Okay? So that is what being talked in the 4th chapter. And then understanding Karma on the platform of Jnana. So there are 3 kinds of Karma. The word karma itself is very difficult to explain actually. Sometimes karma means action. Sometimes karma means reaction to the action. Sometimes karma means prescribed action. Sometimes karma means fruitive action. And sometimes karma means the chain of actions and reactions. These are the different contexts in which the word karma is used. However, broadly speaking, karma can be classified in 3 subcategories: sakarma, vikarma, and akarma. So when you do karma, which is basic, karma basically means, sakarma basically means I'm following the Vedic injunctions. Do this, you'll get a child. Do this, you'll get good health. Do this, you'll get money. Do this, you'll get this. This is called sakarma. Okay, so it has some reactions, and to bear those reactions, we need to keep taking birth. There is something called as vikarma. I don't care for the scriptures. To hell with this Bhagavad Gita and to hell with this Bhagavatam. Live my life. That is called vikarma. So for that, there will be serious reactions. A person who does not follow the scriptures neither gets happiness, nor perfection, nor higher destination. However, when one is doing their activities with detachment, with no desire to enjoy the results of the work, no material desire as such, and one is offering the results of the work and the work also to Krishna, then one gets no reactions. That is called as akarma. Sakarma, vikarma, akarma. So basically, when somebody has a spiritual consciousness, then the result is spiritual. But when somebody has a material consciousness while doing something, then the result is material. So that is being explained in this verse. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagno brahmana hutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. It means a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. This is the understanding of karma on the platform of jnana. Now, there are various ways to attain this jnana. Some people try to attain this jnana by doing some demigod worship. If you don't want to worship Krishna, but if you want to worship Indra, Chandra, Kali, Durga, etc., then it is called it cannot be called bhakti. It is called demigod worship. So by doing demigod worship, they want to get some purification of heart and therefore get jnana. Some people do some mind control to get jnana. Some people do some self-control to get jnana. Charity, austerity, scriptural study. However, the best way to attain jnana is to surrender to a pure devotee of Krishna. Surrender to a guru. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. This is called as the method of getting proper knowledge. Tadvidhi pranipatena. First, one has to approach a spiritual master who's coming in a chain of disciplic succession, not some upstart. And then what one has to do? One has to surrender to them. Tadvidhi pranipatena. And then pariprashnena sevaya. One has to render some service to them and then ask questions. So spiritual life or life in general is not a fan club. I like you very much, let me ask you this question. I like your kirtan very much, let me ask you a question. I like your lecture very much, let me ask you this question. I like your smile, let me ask you this question. I like the way you walk, let me ask you a question. No. Even in the devotee community, we meet so many advanced devotees and one feels like, let me ask some question to everybody. I'll become more advanced. It doesn't work like that. Asking questions can only give you information. However, what we need is transformation of heart. Transformation of heart comes from service and surrender. We need to surrender to a spiritual master and we need to serve that spiritual master. And then when we have done sufficient surrender and sufficient service, and when the spiritual master is pleased that this person is doing so much service to me, may he be blessed. Then when we ask some questions, then those questions, when we get answers of that, our heart will be transformed. So always remember, if we want to be highly enlightened in life, we should not be moving around asking questions to everybody. Rather, we should surrender to a spiritual master, serve him, and then ask questions. Even Krishna, who is the supreme spiritual master of all spiritual masters, appeared on this planet. He also accepted a guru and served as a menial servant by begging, and by doing so many cleaning and other menial services for him, just to set a good standard. That is the process. One has to get their false ego kicked by their spiritual master. Only then one can progress in transcendental knowledge, as this chapter, the name goes. So with this, we come to an end of the 4th chapter. I need another 10 minutes to wrap up. Chapter 5. the second last chapter for today. It's called as Action in Krishna Consciousness. If you remember, in the beginning of the third chapter, Arjuna was confused. Should I take sannyas or should I work? Our Arjuna is again confused after hearing the transcendental knowledge. He is asking, should I take sannyas? This time the question is a little different. Should I do sannyas or should I do karma yoga? So, renunciation and the workings in spirit of renunciation are the same. But as we explained, in case of Arjuna, working is better. Because Arjuna's heart is not fully purified, transcendental knowledge is not there. So, his renunciation will be premature. So, therefore, Arjuna is being told to continue the work. Again, he asks, and again, very patiently, Krishna clarifies that, okay, you please do your work, but do it with a desire to give up the results of the work also. Karma yoga is equal to, but easier than sannyas. Sannyas means you give up the activities also. You don't have the desire to do those activities also. But karma yoga means you do the work, but you give up the desire to enjoy the results of that work. In a sense, both are same, but for a person whose heart is not purified, it is easier to be a karma yogi than be a sannyasi. Because sannyasi requires a lot of spiritual maturity and steadiness of character. So this is the point which Krishna explains, sannyas and tyag, he discusses all these things. And then he talks about performing nishkam karma yoga that frees one from the bondage. He again and again repeats this point throughout the Bhagavad Gita actually, that if you perform your activities without being attached to the results, being detached from the results, then you will not incur any sinful reactions which will come out of the work. However, if you develop attachment, then you will incur. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvan api na lipyate. Krishna says, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. How many of you want to become everybody's favorite? See, very few people are raising hand. If you want that everybody should like you, everybody wants this, come on. How many of you want that everybody should like you? Yes. And it is possible to become like that. All you have to do is you have to control your mind and your senses. Simply if you do this much, you will become dear to everyone. And although you will be working, but you will never be entangled. This is the secret. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha. And you'll become, like you see this picture which I have given, a lotus leaf. No matter how much water you put on it, it never becomes wet. So such a person who is a yoga yukta vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha, he's like this lotus leaf, which is said in the verse number 10. Brahmanya adhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyati na sapapena padma patram nivambhasa. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as lotus leaf is untouched by water. Please listen to this again. These are some very important aspects. One who performs his duty, not somebody else's duty, your duty. In order to understand what your duty, you have to surrender to a spiritual master, because he will tell you what your duty is. Not because Sharma ji ka beta CA padh raha hai isliye mere ko bhi padhna. No. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord. Brahmanya adhaya karmani, surrendering the results to the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by the sinful action. Lipyanti na sapapena, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Padma patram ivambhasa. This is the way in which one has to live in the world. This is called action in Krishna consciousness. Next, Krishna talks about liberation, how to get this liberation by focusing on Krishna or the Supreme. Very famous verse, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shunichaiva Shvapakecha Panditah Samadarshinaha. The humble sages by the knowledge see with equal vision a learned and a gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. As you see in this picture, there is a dog, dog eater, Brahmana, elephant, and a cow. And this Brahmana who is walking there, he sees everybody with an equal vision. How? Because he's seeing not the body, but he's seeing everybody as a part and parcel of Krishna. He's seeing the Paramatma present in everybody's heart. This is called Panditah Samadarshina. Pandit means, here the Pandit will see, here is a dog and here is a Brahmana. What can I do for this Brahmana so that he can progress in his journey back home, back to Godhead? I can engage him in some Pathan, Yajan. I can ask him to give a Gita class. I can ask him to do some purificatory services for me and my family. In this way, he's properly engaged. He's not engaging in sinful work. And in this way, he's progressing in his Krishna consciousness. Now, here is a dog. The dog is a soul. This soul got a Brahmana's body because he did some good work. This soul got a dog's body because he was a very lusty fellow. So what can I do for this lusty fellow dog so that it can progress in the journey back home, back to Godhead? I can't call a dog and make them sit here in the Gita class, Gita SAAR class. It will be of no use. So what should I do? Samadarshinaha. I should give the dog some prasad. So therefore I become a Pandit. Whether I meet a dog or a Brahmana, the only thought process which I have is to how to help them in their journey back home, back to God. This is called Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. This is a very deep fact which Krishna has taught. Look at everybody as a part and parcel of Krishna. Look at the Paramatma sitting in everybody's heart and don't treat people on the bodily platform. Help everybody as a spirit soul. Why? Because Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. Because there is no other way other than doing this. Why? Because you know who is Krishna? Who is there in everybody's heart? He is Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam. He is the beneficiary of all the sacrifices and austerities. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. All the planets in the material world, in the spiritual world, everywhere, he's the Maheshwaram. He's the owner of everything. Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. He's the best well-wishing friend, the true, genuine, eternal, unconditional, unmotivated, well-wishing friend of everybody. In fact, I should use the word only. He's the only well-wisher of everybody. Everybody is engaged in you scratch my back, I scratch your back business. But Krishna doesn't want anything from us. His love is unconditional. So therefore, he is our only true well-wisher. So this verse is called as the peace formula of Bhagavad Gita. If somebody can understand that Krishna is the actual proprietor and the beneficiary of all the sacrifices and austerities which I am performing. And Krishna is the owner of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from him. And Krishna is my best well-wishing friend. If these three things I can understand, I will always be peaceful. Gyatva mam shantim richati. Okay. So with this, we conclude the 5th chapter of the Gita. And the last chapter for today's discussion is the Dhyana Yoga. What is Dhyana Yoga? Dhyana vasthita tadagatena manasaha pashyanti yam yoginaha. The aim of Dhyana is to become completely fixed on the beautiful form of the Lord. So therefore, meditation on the Supreme Lord and not some void meditation is the main element of Dhyana Yoga. And it has 8 limbs: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So, Yama, Niyama, do's and don'ts. Asana, Pranayam, everybody knows. Yama, Niyama, do's and don'ts. Asana, Pranayam, everybody knows. So these, they are meant for the purification of the body and purification of the mind to some degree. Doesn't even touch the mind so much. Dharana Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara. Pratyahara means I am engaged in sense control. I've started controlling my senses now. Now spiritual life is beginning. Pratyahara. Dharana. I'm trying to control my mind. And then when my mind is controlled in such a way that I have become fixed up, not at something void, but at the form of the Lord. There's no such thing as void meditation. If you read this Yoga Sutras, whether it is the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and anything, this is the main aim of Dhyana Yoga. You see this yogi who's sitting there, you see in his heart, he's meditating on the Paramatma. This is the goal of yoga. So, when you reach the Dharana Dhyan, when your meditation on the Supreme Lord becomes fixed, then that is called Dhyan. And then when you reach a stage where you cannot think of anything else except Krishna and the name, fame, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna, that is called Samadhi. So a person in Samadhi need not necessarily look like the person shown in the picture. A person who is always thinking of Krishna, never forgetting Krishna, may be sweeping the floor of some temple also. Please understand. Samadhi can be dynamic. A person who is running around the whole city trying to do some service for Krishna in such a way that he's always remembering Krishna, never forgetting Krishna, is in Samadhi. A person chanting Hare Krishna, clapping his hands and dancing in front of the deities is also in Samadhi. That is the definition of Samadhi. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Okay? So therefore, mind control is one of the most important aspects of Dhyana Yoga. And mind is both friend and enemy. The 5th verse of the 6th chapter says, Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hya atmano bandhur atmaiva ripur atmanaha. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is his friend. Mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So mind control is very important for Dhyana Yoga. The next verse after this says, Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanah jitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. So mind control is not an option. If you cannot control your mind, you are like living with an enemy 365 days, 24 hours, 24/7. So that's a very dangerous position. So mind has to be controlled. Moving on, this chapter highlights the various stages of Ashtanga Yoga practice. It gives us some recommendations how to do this Dhyana Yoga. This chapter says, 17th verse, Yuktahara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkhaha. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work. Eating, sleeping, recreation, and work. If these things are regulated, then one can mitigate all the pains by practicing this yoga system. So these are some of the recommendations of Ashtanga Yoga practice. However, mind is very difficult to control. So what is the success formula, or what is the process or the general principle of controlling the mind? Yato yato nischalati manaschanchalam asthiram tatastato niyam yaitad atmanya eva vasham nayet. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So when again and again, when we are trying to focus our mind on the process of chanting the holy names of the Lord or meditating on the form of the Lord, the mind will wander here and there. Again and again, we have to practice to bring it back. This process will give us little bliss over a period of time, and then the mind will give up on us and will cooperate with us. So that is the principle. Yato yato nischalati. Not that my mind has started thinking about some sense object, then I surrender to my mind, I can't do anything. I'll not even try to bring it back. No, it doesn't work like that. So need of controlling the mind is very much necessary. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramadhi balavadridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayu rivasadushkam. Arjuna was telling, my dear Krishna, if you want me to control wind, wind, I can do that. But if you want me to control mind, mind, I cannot do that. But then Krishna gives a solution. He says, yes, it is. First, he acknowledges, see, Krishna is an expert counselor. When he's talking to someone, he is not like turning a deaf ear to whatever they say. When Arjuna is saying, yeah, it's very difficult. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who doesn't even know what is, of course, he knows everything, but he never experiences problems with mind control. But then when Arjuna says, he acknowledges. He says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Manor Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Chakrihyate. O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the mind. Who is saying? Krishna is saying. That's how he feels our miseries. He feels for us. O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihate. By suitable practice and detachment. What is that suitable practice? Chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Chanting sincerely and hear yourself chanting. This is called suitable practice. It controls the mind. Just like when some car passes by from here in great speed, all of a sudden it attracts our attention and we start listening to that car, and then all our attention is there and the mind is controlled by that car. So similarly, when we chant Hare Krishna over a period of time, by the transcendental names of Krishna, our mind will be controlled. And there is no difference between the name of Krishna and Krishna himself. So this is called suitable practice. Detachment. Everything which is unfavorable for me to chant Hare Krishna or to meditate on the name, fame, qualities and pastimes of Krishna, I should give it up. Like meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, these activities are unfavorable. Detachment, vairagya. I have to give up these things. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihate. By suitable practice and detachment, one can control their mind. If these two things are not there, you try for 50,000 years, your mind will not be controlled. Think of any bad habit which you have. It can be anything. Unless and until you do a suitable practice to give it up, and unless you develop some determined detachment from those circumstances which are forcing you into that addiction again and again, it is not possible to control it. And Krishna has already told in the Bhagavad Gita. That which great psychiatrists tell you after charging you for many, many sessions is being told in Bhagavad Gita in one line. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihate. So with this, we are almost towards the end of our discussion. Only one point is pending. Arjuna asks a question. My dear Lord, I'm trying to become a devotee now. But what if I become unsuccessful? Due to worldly mindedness, if I practice this process of devotion for some time and then give it up, then what will happen to me? मैं ना घर का रहूंगा ना घाट का रहूंगा, ना माया मिलेगी ना राम मिलेंगे, enjoy भी नहीं कर पा रहा हूं, and now that I know the philosophy so much, I can't go back also. I'll become like that cloud which is scattered apart in the sky by the flow of various wind, riven cloud. So this is a very nice discussion. Arjuna puts it purposely just for people like us who can have some faith. Ki, haan, one who is on the righteous path is never destroyed. Krishna says, Partha naiveha namutra vinashastasya vidyati nahi kalyanakrit kaschit durgatim tat gacchati. One who walks on the path of dharma or the spiritual path is never destroyed. So what happens? Arjuna is asking, what if he leaves the path in between? Then what will happen? Krishna says, no problem. If a person who is chanting Hare Krishna and who is my devotee, due to worldly mindedness, due to bad association, gives up that path, then what will happen? After quitting this body, they will go to the planet of they will go to higher planetary systems where only pious people live. And there for lakhs of years, he is going to enjoy those various kinds of sense gratification. And then when he will be convinced that this sense gratification is nothing but some phantasmagoria or just a waste of time, then he will again come back to this earthly planetary system and take birth either in a clean, disciplined Brahminical family where beef will not be stuffed in his mouth, or else he'll take birth in a highly aristocratic family where anxiety for roti, kapda and makan will not be there. So in such a circumstance, he will have good opportunity to practice Hare Krishna. And if that person has practiced Krishna consciousness for a long time and then given up due to bad association, then he'll take birth in the family of a Vaishnava, where even from birth he'll be chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So what is the loss in this process of Krishna consciousness? You practice Krishna consciousness and then you went to Janaloka, Maharloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka, and you lived for hundreds and lakhs of years. And then you came back, you took birth in a Vaishnava family. What is the loss? Is there any loss? So there is a very nice destination for unsuccessful yogis also. But we should not be like that. We should try to finish our Krishna consciousness in this very lifetime and go back home, back to God. And in the end, Krishna tells something, the 47th verse of the 6th chapter, which is the seed verse for the next 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, which we will cover tomorrow. In the end, he says something which changes the entire course of the discussion of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, please listen very carefully. This is the most important verse of today. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam samyukta tamo mataha. Arjuna is asking, who is the best yogi? Amongst all these karma yogis, jnana yogis, dhyana yogis, who's the best? Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvesham. Amongst all the yogis, madgaten antaratmana, one who is always thinking of me in the core of his heart. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam, who's rendering transcendental loving service to me. Samayukta tamo mataha, he is the best amongst all the yogis. The translation of this verse says, and of all the yogis, one who with great faith always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is most intimately united with me and is the highest amongst all yogis. This is my opinion. So Krishna has made it very clear that he likes only the devotees. Therefore, in the later chapters, he says, Bhaktya mama vijanat. Only my devotee can understand. Karma yogi, jnana yogi, dhyana yogi, ashtanga yogi, all these cannot understand. Only a bhakti yogi can understand. So therefore, in the beginning of this session only, we told that the best part of the Bhagavad Gita, that is the Bhakti Yoga, is put in the middle. So the best part of this seminar is going to come tomorrow. Chapters 7 to 12, which is like an extrapolation of this last verse, Yoginam api sarvesham. Krishna, when somebody will hear this, if somebody is attached to Dhyana Yoga or Karma Yoga, they'll be devastated. So Krishna is going to prove in the next 7 chapters how and why, although Krishna is impartial, but why he favors his devotees. Although Krishna is not partial, but why he allows everybody to come into his arena of partiality. Why his divine nature always protects only his devotees. Why he is personally carrying to his devotees what they need and protecting what they have. Why? So these questions will be answered in tomorrow's session, which is the jewel of the Bhagavad Gita. It's like a jewel box, like we explained in the beginning. So the best part, that is the Bhakti Yoga chapter, which is the essence of the essence of the essence of Bhagavad Gita, will be covered tomorrow. And needless to say, the biggest essence verse of the Bhagavad Gita is somewhere between these 7 chapters, which we will cover tomorrow. So with that, we conclude today's discussion. Thank you very much. Are there any quick questions? If you want a quick summary, just remember 2 verses. First, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena seva. If you want knowledge, surrender to a spiritual master, render service to him. Then ask questions confidentially in a very submissive spirit, not in a challenging mood. And in that way, you will gain transcendental knowledge, which will lead to purification of heart. And amongst all these yogis, yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam samay yukta tamo. The bhakti yogi is the topmost. We also concluded in the previous verses how bhakti yoga already contains karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga. In fact, if you carefully analyze the Bhagavad Gita, you will find karma yoga, jnana yoga, and dhyana yoga, in order to attain their perfection, they need a touch of bhakti yoga. Nishkam karma yoga to jnana yoga needs purification of heart and detachment from the results of the work. That is only possible when you attach yourself to Krishna. So there is the touch of bhakti yoga to move from karma yoga to jnana yoga. Again, transcendental knowledge will become stable in heart only when you move to dhyana yoga. That also needs a touch of bhakti yoga. We have to know about Krishna. Similarly, dhyana yoga, the goal of dhyana yoga is to meditate on the Lord. So unless you meditate on the Lord, you cannot progress from dhyana yoga into the bhakti yoga. So all the yoga systems, they need a touch of bhakti yoga to attain perfection. On the contrary, bhakti yoga in itself is independent and already comprises all the other yogas. So therefore, Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratma. That amongst all the yogis, my devotee is the topmost. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakale ashant, Krishna bhakta nishkam ataeva shant. One who wants material satisfaction through various material engagements, one who wants satisfaction by getting some siddhis, becoming bigger than the biggest, smaller than the smallest, lighter than the lightest, getting whatever they want. One who has desires for sense gratification. All of them are ashant. But because Krishna Bhakt, he is not desiring for himself, he is desiring only for Guru and Krishna, so he is Nishkam. Ataeva Shant. This is the essence of the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, which will, in the light of which we will move on to the next 6 chapters. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, Shalini Mishra is saying that she has some question. You can type your question here. And in the meantime, if anybody has a question, we have only 5 minutes to take questions. Okay, looks like we have no questions. I'll request Shalini Mishra to please type the question here, and I'll take it up after doing a short kirtan. How many of you would like to participate in a kirtan? 5 minutes. Okay, so let's move towards the altar. We'll open the altar, and then we'll offer an arti, and then we'll do a kirtan. And after this kirtan, we will move towards prasadam. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So we will also put this camera towards the altar so that the people who are online, no need to exit. You can also see the kirtan and the deity worship which is going on. Hare Krishna. So that Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram, Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Gandharvika Giridhari Gandharvika Giridhari Pura Hare Jaya Gandharvika Hari Gandharvika Pura Hare Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Ananta Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Ananta Jaya Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Ananta Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Ananta Jaya Gaura Nidhai Gaura Nidhai Gaura Nidhai Jaya Gaura युग धर्म हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की, गीता सेमिनार की, जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि। Thank you very much everybody. Prasadam is being served towards your back. Please honor the prasadam. If you want to take a little bit home for your loved ones, please do so. And all those who are online, thank you very much for joining. See you again tomorrow at the same time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.